We good?
We should be. There's a 10-second delay.
Hey everybody, good morning. Sorry we're running a little bit late this morning. Just preparing for the token sale launch tomorrow. So things are a bit hectic, per as usual. Let's see. Let me just dive right in. Start addressing some of the questions we're having. The airdrop. Let's see. We are not doing one, obviously. We've had a lot of scammers and phishers go around saying there's a Polyswarm airdrop. There's not. The only thing that we are running is a contest for security experts, where you can basically go submit new and unique malware and possibly be rewarded with some nectar. Let's see. Let me get into more specific questions about the ICO. How will tranches work? Right. So we have various bonus tiers. I believe off my last check, they're 20, 15, 10, so on downward. So basically what happens is for every $5 million USD, we sort of go through those tranches. So the the 20% tranche is about $5 million wide. So $5 million in ETH will sort of step you down to the next tranche. And the idea is that the exchange rate for ETH to dollars is set just before the sale starts. Let's see. So another question that comes up a lot is, won't rewarding security experts for assertions cause more people to create viruses and malware? So here it's important to understand a little bit about the Polyswarm economic model. Very specifically, the idea behind the economic model is that there are billions of malware scans that occur across the world daily, and those scans average about a quarter of a US cent to a cent and a half in cost. So the idea that a security expert would create a piece of malware and then stand to gain on the order of dollars for sort of identifying that malware, I think is actually frankly bogus. Here's the reason why. It costs an expert's time to develop malware. A programmer's time to develop malware is pretty valuable, right? So we're talking on the order of tens of hours to develop a new piece of custom malware that has previously been unidentified. And I think no matter where you live or what the living wage is, if we're talking cents, or dollars, small dollar amounts, for also providing the identification of that malware, it's simply not worth it for the security expert to create both the virus and the micro engine that can identify it. So where the experts actually end up making their money is identifying or sort of creating, maintaining, and advancing micro engines that identify threats in volume, right? So the micro engines that are successful should scan on the order of thousands of files a day and make assertions on those files, right? That's what's gonna make a security expert successful in Polyswarm. So what forms of revenue streams do you have planned so far? So this is a good question, right? Polyswarm doesn't depend solely on sort of the economics of Nectar as a company. What we're hoping to do is also add value-add services to the Polyswarm network that basically enhance the offerings and enable security experts to operate more effectively on the network. So very briefly, our revenue streams are as follows. We plan on producing software tooling, and what that means is software tools that will help experts do their jobs better, both free and for a fee. But the idea is that successful experts will want to focus on what they're good at, predicting what's malware and what's not. They may not want to spend time doing things like creating their own corpus of malware, which is a service we might provide, or figuring out how to price their assertions in Nectar, right? Designing and maintaining a model that does that reliably. That's also another revenue stream for us, right? So those are just two of sort of the broader class of revenue streams we plan on the network. One of the other things we're looking at is actually partnering with insurance entities to better price and sell cyber risk insurance based off the data that Polyswarm is generating about the market for malware and how good we are as a community at detecting it. What other questions do we have? see, I'll pop into Telegram for a second. Check that out too. Let's see. No new questions, guys? Alright, everybody's asleep today. While we're on the subject, I want to sort of give a shout out to some of the better questions in Telegram. I think, what's up?
One of the questions they asked is, what incentive do we have to protect the token value?
Oh, sorry, okay. So guys, I'm looking at some other questions that came in from my team that they batched over the next couple days. They just highlighted them and flogged me. Is there going to be a max purchase for the ICO? No, we do not have a max cap on purchases during the ICO. Very specifically, the reason we didn't do that is because we think that people who want to make large bulk purchases would have contacted us in pre-sale and done so then. What to expect during the KYC process. So the general overview of the KYC process, without sort of giving away our back-end details, are we expect you to log in, register, and complete a profile. The profile completion instructions are there on the screen, but we expect things like a full name and an address and some other details, sort of depending on where you're located. What we do is we run that on the back end automatically through our own KYC process, and our KYC process does basic things like sanction screening and making sure we're not selling to sort of people that I'm sure we can all agree we should not be selling to. So after that happens, basically you will receive a green check mark on your profile if we were able to step you through all those things without having any sort of sanctions issues or any back-end KYC issues. If you do not get that green check mark, please feel free to contact support. There is a little blurb on the lower right-hand corner of the token sale page that allows you to contact support directly, and they'll attempt to help you with your problem and make sure you get verified by the time the sale starts. Now, after you are verified, you'll be taken to a Nectar purchase page, and that purchase page has instructions for how to use specific wallets like your MyEther wallet or MetaMask, and it also has some fields to set. One of them is your maximum Ethereum contribution, and once you set that and ask for a transaction authorization, you will get a nice little long piece of text and some more instructions. That long piece of text is your one-time transaction authorization code. So you'll need to send that along with your purchase, and we will be releasing some purchase videos that sort of walk you through the process. And if you don't understand anything, please take a look at those videos. And if you're not familiar with the process after those videos, feel free to pop into Telegram or let us know if you have any further questions. Now, one last thing to mention about that transaction, that one-time use transaction authorization, blob we call it. When you specify the maximum amount you're going to contribute, you can contribute up to that maximum and under that. But if you try to contribute more than the maximum you've set, your contribution will be rejected. Let's see. So another question, more specifically, how can I get help during the process of registration and purchasing? Again, if you look at the bottom of the token sale page, there's a little help icon down there, and we have some people standing by on the support team that can help you if you run into issues. I don't see any incentives for the team to protect token value. Please correct me if I'm wrong. Sure. So sorry if it's not clear, but look, all the team members in Polyswarm hold equity in the company, and also Polyswarm holds at the end about 15% of the total tokens minted in the sale. So because we all hold equity in the company, the nice thing about that is we can, as we bring more people on, their incentives are directly aligned with the company's incentives, and the company's incentives are to protect the value of its own token holdings, right? And obviously to sort of further the mission of Polyswarm and Nectar, which is to decentralize security expertise and make sure we're actually solving the antivirus problem in a different way than currently is done. So I take issue when people say, they don't see the incentives aligned for the team to protect the value. Everybody's here working from 7 a.m. till midnight, basically, in most time zones to get this thing off. And I think we're highly incentivized to protect the value of what we created here. Hey, Josh Whale. Josh Whale's great. I actually appreciate his questions quite a lot. He's asking, why do you think, or who do you think will consume the data generated by Polyswarm, and in what fashion? So this is actually something I'm very curious about and very excited about. Look, over the past 20 years in antivirus, we don't have a good data source for how all the antivirus vendors have performed, right? So one of the pieces of data we're generating in Polyswarm is this idea of, over time, how accurate are experts at predicting what is malware and what isn't, right? And because the record of this is basically anchored in the blockchain, it's immutable and permanent, which means that there's no revisionist history going on in the performance of your antivirus. So I think, and I'm hoping, that actually enterprises and consumers will consume that data either in raw or distilled fashion and basically produce a better sort of understanding of how, or which experts are accurate in predicting what's malware and what's not, and how often they're accurate. And my hope behind that data source is that it actually leads to better solutions in the space, right? And identifications of experts who really have something unique to give back to the anti-malware ecosystem. Let's see. Will you be open to any potential partnerships with other security providers? Can you see Polyswarm providing data back to the likes of FortiGuard, McAfee threat, or McAfee threat feeds in the future? Absolutely. So if you look at how our model's set up, and you look at how fees and incentives are handled in the ecosystem, you'll notice that we're not a middleman. Polyswarm is a company. We are not a middleman or a gatekeeper to any of this, right? We want Polyswarm to be open to anybody who can help in the anti-malware landscape, right? So we've already reached out to several companies about potential partnership, and I think we'll have an announcement for partnering with the developers behind a well-known open source project in this area very soon. But the idea is that we want as many companies in this space and existing projects in this space to participate in the ambassador, the security expert role, to sort of make the network better. The idea behind Polyswarm has never become that we become this very powerful central organization. It's more that through the decentralization of security expertise that we reroute subscription incentives for anti-malware to security experts that are actually protecting users from their specific threats that they're facing day in and day out. So we see it as more of an efficient way to identify the right potential partners to send essentially a bounty or an offer to, and not so much a centralization of security expertise. So another question from Raynout. If I have proceeded all the through all, this is another ICO question. If I have proceeded through all the steps via my Ether wallet after clicking the send transaction buttons 2 days before the ICO, do I need to do these steps again when the sale starts? I would say very specifically, issue yourself a new transaction authorization code just to be on the safe side. You can generate as many transaction authorization codes as you need. So if you want to do a couple contributions, that's just fine with us. But once you use that transaction code and it's either it's accepted, or possibly if it's rejected, I would generate a new one just to be on the safe side, because those transaction codes are one-time use. Hopefully that answers your question. Pop back in Telegram and see if it has. Okay. So I got another sort of comment in here. Someone's saying they haven't received an email confirmation. Look, to be honest, we've had a fair amount of problems with some email confirmations. It's largely dependent on which provider you're using for email. We've had some specific issues with Big Pond, an Australian ISP. We've gotten in touch with them about their spam configuration and configured our domain to have the appropriate anti-spam records associated with the DNS records. But Big Pond specifically hasn't gotten back to us on ensuring that our emails get through. So my best advice, if you're not receiving any of the emails, or you haven't received email confirmation anyway, please get in touch with us via support, or pop into Telegram, and we'll try to help as much as possible. But before you do that, if you could check your spam folder, that would be much appreciated. Unfortunately, it's just an issue with email and all the different ways that providers configure their setups around the world. Let's see. What else do we have? Okay. Hey, Josh. Another good question from Josh. So he says, a lot of identification processes of malware seems manual. In terms of the analyst actually needing to decode threats and upload, how does this stack up with things like cloud-based sandboxing becoming more popular and potentially generating signatures dynamically? So a few things. One, that's a good question. We expect there to be maybe some manual work in the Polyswarm ecosystem, but the vast majority of what security experts should be doing in Polyswarm is building and maintaining software micro-engines, right? Now, what we're not very specific about is what these micro-engines look like and what they are, right? So let me give you an idea of what Josh Whale is talking about here. There's something called a malware sandbox, and basically what you do there is you take something like an executable or a PDF or something that you've received that you think might be malware, and you run it in a safe, isolated environment to see if it behaves like malware. So malware-like behavior would be something like deleting your entire hard drive, right? That'd be bad, and that's obviously malicious. There are more subtle things that we may have a hard time understanding if they're malicious or not. So back to micro-engines, we expect that security experts will use a combination of something called dynamic sandboxing, which is basically detonating malware to see how it's behaving. They can also use something called static analysis, which means they actually use software to disassemble the malware and look at the underlying code and see if the behavior looks malicious without actually executing the malware in a sandbox itself. So we suspect that security experts will sort of wrap many of these processes into their micro-engine. So at the end of the day, the idea is they take the output from all these processes and they put it through some analysis, and they say, hey, does this thing look like malware? Meaning, does my static or dynamic analysis, produce indicators that make it look like a malicious program? So that's sort of how we envision the ecosystem working. And we think that, to Josh Whale's actual question, how this stacks up against things like cloud-based sandboxing becoming more popular, and generating signatures dynamic, we think honestly, Polyswarm will accelerate the progress in this area, and our goal is to have that sort of detection of new threats be more of a sure thing. So today, antivirus is about 56 to 74% effective in detecting new threats, right? We think that number should be closer to the 90s, right? So what that means is if a new piece of malware is released to the internet, Polyswarm should be in the 90th percentile of detecting a new threat that it's never seen before. And that's where we're really relying on the power of the crowd, is to sort of generate a diverse set of micro-engines that ensure that detection average gets better. Okay, what else do we have? All right, so I think we're running short on time here. I think that, really glad to see everybody in Telegram asking lots of great questions. I'm happy you guys are participating. Thanks for keeping it civil in the Telegram channel. We really appreciate that. We're sort of working overtime to get this thing launched. So I want to remind you that the ICO is coming up on February 20th. We'll see you at 1900 UTC, and that's 7 p.m. UTC. Happy to answer any questions or handle registrations or support requests in the meantime. And hopefully you can get your transaction authorization codes, and we hope you're ready to go when the sale starts. Thanks again, guys, and we'll see you soon.